Hey guys, and welcome once again to Topdecked, the Gwent talk show. My name is Jagras, and I'll be joined on the host desk today by Impetuous Panda.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And this week our guests are Merchant.
Hello.
And Shinmiri.
Hey everybody.
And this is the Challenger episode of the talk show, because Challenger did just happen. But before we do that, let's do a little bit of introduction. So Shinmiri, you are a player for Team Aretusa, is that correct?
Yep, and a streamer. Some of you guys might know me from my channel, Shinmiri 2.
Yep, his channel's super focused on kind of teaching people, and it's a really good place for viewers who want to learn competitive Gwent, because Shinmiri, he plays very well, and he's also really good at explaining his decisions, which I think for newer players or people who want to try and grind out the pro ladder, it's a good stream to go to.
Thanks, Jagras. Appreciate that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And then we also have Merchant, who is a shoutcaster, commentator for Gwent.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
You have to confirm this stuff, Merchant.
Oh, yeah.
And,
She could be lying about you.
He likes to duo with Panda.
I do.
He doesn't like to. He's kind of forced to.
I'm contractually obliged to duo with
Exactly.
Panda. Yeah.
It's not a happy relationship.
We find no pleasure in it.
Not at all.
Not zero negative pleasure in it.
I mean, how long is this duo really going to last, considering Panda keeps trying to report you to CD Projekt Red?
Yeah, that's true. He's trying to get my Twitter account banned, so...
For very valid reasons, so it's not my fault.
Apparently, posting pictures of Panda's face really zoomed in counts as bullying.
He loves it.
You're not wrong. We also do have a little clip for you guys to kind of break the ice, which was a Avengers Gwent edition. So Lurtz, our production guy, is going to play that, so we can all kind of be amused by the fact that everyone here is, I don't know, members of the Avengers. I feel like this trailer works much better if you've actually seen the trailer itself.
I haven't seen any of the Avengers films.
I haven't watched the movie.
Yeah.
But
I haven't either.
Planning on seeing it tomorrow.
See if we could become.
Well, Ocean Mud was Doctor Strange, for example, and then I don't know who any of these characters are. I feel like it's much funnier if you know who the characters are. We're like the worst audience for this.
I mean, it's still hilarious, though. Come on, look at that face right there.
Kroki's face is beautiful. Yeah, who's Bojo, man? I don't know who any of these people are.
It's just the faces. Look at Merchant's face.
I haven't even seen myself in this. I've never seen it before.
I just love that LifeCoach is Captain America.
No, and Super JJ is Bucky Barnes, right?
Oh, is he?
It's like the super lore friendly.
Hard advantage. Yet to fail.
And Freddy Spider-Man, this is the best part.
The fact he has the same expression at every single moment is just weird to me. I don't think it fits.
Homecoming still arrives.
You know who that's meant to be with JJ Patak in the third? I get that Swim's the bad guy.
Yeah, it seems like the Mega Bat.
Evacuate the city.
Look at Freddy's face.
I didn't realize
Engage our
it's Aquadex
defenses.
anymore.
And get these men.
Patch.
And it's Merchant. The thing is, you gotta appreciate that someone spent ages editing these faces onto these faces. As someone who edits their own videos.
Look at, you can't. Merchant's face while fighting can't be that face. It doesn't make sense. He's like a sad guy just swinging punches.
Yeah, I take no pleasure in my life.
It also works better with sound because that voiceover. So there we go. That is the video. I don't know. I think fan stuff like this is really fun. It's always cool to see people do creative things. Shoutouts to Red Mage Man and to Lurtz who made this possible.
Hello, you guys.
It's not over yet, Jagras.
But we don't have sound, so you can't appreciate the dumb jokes.
You're interrupting.
Oh, I apologize. So that was that. Now let's talk about Challenger. So Tailbot at last is victorious. Was this a surprise to anyone?
With the recent performances, not really, but I mean, it's interesting. Back in Gwent Slam, when he came in as an unknown player with Atsukov as well in the quarterfinals and stuff, and he ended up losing his first I think it was like to Milliman or to Freddy or something like that. He didn't give a really good performance. People wrote him off, and I wrote him off as like just another player, just another guy who's just
A
getting
ladder
to
grinder, right?
yeah, like winning a qualifier and that's it. Like this Polish guy's not going to do anything, and he slowly disproved that. Like especially through the official tournaments, he started really performing much better against Hanachan a few games and just a few important games, and that I think his image changed drastically. Obviously, of course, also with like the memes of his persona and stuff, but as a player as well.
I think as a player, he's shown that he's super consistent, whether on the pro ladder or in tournament setting now, and he's kind of reached that truly tail god status with this win, with this championship solidifying his status among the Gwent legends.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Tailbot just because he's like the most improved player, like objectively, I think. Because like how Panda says, like when he came in the first tournaments, yeah, he was just kind of like nothingy. It's like pure ladder decks, pretty unnoteworthy performance, and now he's just like ascended to become a deity. And yeah, I think he's like a great story so far in the Gwent scene, and he's like a fantastic guy as well. So yeah, Talbot's great.
I think the thing was when he first came, like you said, he played ladder decks, but he played ladder decks at a very, very high skill level. Like he would win using ladder decks because he played them so well. So now that he's starting to kind of branch out in terms of tournament strategy, and he's utilizing like the Brewer targeting that he used in this tournament, now that he's starting to kind of play more for tournaments than for ladder, this is where you start to see Tailbot shine. Because Tailbot, like I don't think he's ever gone out in the first round of a tournament. He always either reaches the semifinals or the finals.
No, I just confirmed.
He went out in the first time.
In the second Gwent Slam, he lost to Machinos.
Yeah.
He lost to Machinos 1-3. So that was like his first performance on the big stage where people kind of wrote him off. And I mean, Machinos is a good player, but he was kind of memed about because in that season he had like the 2K, 3K games to get to top 8. So he was like a good known player, but not someone you would consider like a top 4, like one of the best players in the world. And Tailbot losing to Machinos kind of people wrote him off a lot because of that, and then he turned it around in like the official events.
Yeah, I mean, imagine playing 3K games and not making it to top 8. Pretty sure that would suck.
Ouch, burn.
I'm not very nice. Best plays of the tournament then. What were your favorite kind of strategies? What were your favorite plays? What kind of surprised you?
I like the games where there was quite a few games where one player would go 2 cards down in round 1, and then they just pushed really hard in round 2 and ended up 2-0ing. I think Adzikov versus Kolomon might have been one of them, right? And it was interesting to see that strategy being employed at such a high level, because usually, especially for beginners, card advantage is everything, and if you go 2 cards down, you're like in a really underdog position, and that's true most of the time. But depending on the matchup, I think that being able to control the length of the round and being able to force your opponent to play all their good cards in round 2 is a pretty good advantage in itself as well.
Would you say that going 2 cards down and winning is worse than losing on even?
I think it's better than losing on even.
It's better than losing on even. I think that was proven pretty hardcore. Like, yeah, I think we saw the first round. I think Shinmiri basically nailed it. Like, first round was being respected a lot, just in like the pace setting that happens from there on in. Yeah, I think like you'd much rather win 2 down than lose on even.
And you always have like a better situation because it's the only thing that changes is you going first or last in round 3, basically. Because if you lose on even, you're still going to be a card down, and if you lose 2 cards down, you can still drive past to be a card down as well. So it's always going to be, unless there's like carryover, like war dancers in play or something, it's always going to be better to win 2 cards down. And I think Tailbot versus Apologize was one of the games as well. Series we casted, he played Boats against Brewer, and he ended up 2-0ing as well to win that series. I'm pretty sure.
I think that's fair. Losing on even, the thing is, if you lose on even, you then also give up control of round 2. Which means that they can then choose to just bleed you, which doesn't work for strategies like the kind of cursed boat strategy, because that one you want 2 long rounds. You don't really have a short round strategy. And we actually saw across the course of the tournament, the players who chose to go 2 cards down with boats ended up ultimately winning the match, whereas the players who chose to pass on even with boats ended up losing overall.
Yeah. One other thing was it was really good strategy actually sometimes against a deck like Brewer Nova, who has a lot of dead cards. Like they have 2 War Dancers and they have like Aileron and also Cleaver that are kind of like awkward if they don't play them early on. And if you go into like a sudden death round 2, sometimes they get stuck with these dead cards in their hand. They have to waste their officers on them, and they don't really get that much long round value after all.
And also Brewer being dead at some points because you have so many silvers that work with thinning and stuff like that. And we saw Colemon like barely getting the Yavin out from Brewer after an officer mulligan, so he almost had like a dead Brewer as well. So yeah, very good point as well with
well,
dead
he did end up with a dead Brewer in one match because he had to Brewer into a spy.
It's not dead. You're still playing a card, but yeah.
Yeah, but it was a situation where if he could have just played Brewer and not the spy, he would have been fine. But it kind of worked out that way, and that was because he was using the strategy where he was dry passing on round one, and it didn't work out for him the first game, and then he tried to do it again, and then it didn't work out, and then we saw the story. He got 3-0'd.
Yeah. What was that?
Go ahead, Shinmiri.
Thanks. I was going to say, what was that? There was a match, I think it was like it might have been Tailbot versus Hanachan, where they both, like Hanachan dry passed Tailbot in round one, and then as Henselt, Tailbot just dry passed right back.
Just to mention that's what I really liked. Like the moment where you notice he dry passed and they were going to a long round, I thought Henselt would not be able to win that against like elves and stuff, but once I saw that the change in his deck was where he had ballistas, it was so apparent that he was going to definitely win that round. Once he started playing them out, you saw like the damage they could do and just kill all the elves before the vanguards could be coming down.
It was super crucial that Hanachan didn't have the ward answer in round one to prevent that dry pass back as well.
Yeah,
there was a lot of kind of interesting passing strategy going on just in Gwent Challenger overall, and also I guess interesting ways that players were utilizing their spies, whether they were playing them early, whether they were playing late, or whether they were not playing them at all.
Yeah, I agree. It was especially like, and I mean, it's hard to pinpoint like exact plays because it is kind of a few days ago, and there was so many matches played, and obviously, even though we saw them and even casted, half of the matches, it's still hard to pinpoint exact periods in time. I like Freddy's play. That was, I think, very surprising right at the start of the tournament. As the first game of the whole tournament, I think a lot of people saw that play with the Yennefer and and Germain, and I mean, I've seen it played on ladder as well the past 2 days, so I think it definitely impacted ladder as well in the meta in general. But that was a very fun play to see. I don't think I'd ever seen that in ladder or anything. That exact combo to open off the game. So it was just how like perfectly the stars aligned for Freddy there, because it only worked so well because the agitators had come out. So he got like an enormous, he got like an enormous positive point swing because the agitator. Yeah, that was a fantastic play to like kick the tournament off. I think it really set the scene for. I think for me, like a highlight was just Tailbot's quite unusual playing style. Like we saw him playing very aggressively, and it was cool. Like I feel like in Gwent, often in tournaments, it can be hard to distinguish individual player styles, but I think we saw a lot more of that this time, with like Tailbot playing very aggressively, and of course Freddy just being Freddy as he is. So I feel like it was easier this tournament to describe people's actual individual play styles, which was nice.
Yeah, I think Freddy's strategy in general was quite interesting in that he had these 2 red coin decks. But it did, once they were kind of revealed, make it easier to ban him out, because that's effectively what Tailbot did, is he banned the Curse deck because that was one of his blue coin decks, so that makes it very difficult for Freddy, especially when it ended up in the finals that Tailbot was going to go first for 3 of the games and Freddy only 2 of the games. By utilizing the ban in that way, it really kind of cornered Freddy, on top of the fact that he was playing Brewer, which was something that Tailbot was targeting. It did mean that I felt the finals were very much, just going into them favored towards Tailbot.
I wanted to ask, what do you guys think about the format where everybody knows everybody else's deck lists? Like, I feel like it really discourages people from bringing something really like super unusual that can surprise people. Something like even like Sabbath, for example. I'm someone who really hates Sabbath, but like something that can surprise people, but has a disadvantage once that surprise factor is lost. You can't bring something like that because it only works for the first round. I wish there was some way we could get around that.
But there's no way to do that, really, because the decks are going to be shown on... The only thing you do, not showing the deck list, is make it so that players have to watch the whole stream day one and can't prepare, can't relax, can't, eat.
Well,
right,
I'd say, like, the way that you play around that is, like, sideboarding, basically.
Yeah, I agree with
that's like, what I was going to get at, yeah.
Sideboarding is, like, the best thing in CCGs, and it's only in Magic tournaments, to my knowledge, anyway. But, yeah, I agree, Shinmiri. I think it's like, I actually personally don't really like Conquest as a tournament format because of that. Because of like, hey, you're going to turn up and, maybe 1 out of your 4 decks will be a bit spicy, but after the first round, that's going to be a massive chain and it's going to hold you back. Like, I would love to see a Gwent tournament with like traditional sideboarding and stuff, I think it would really lead to some crazy stuff. Because if you think about all the like small packages, that's easy to insert into things like Sabbath, right? Like Sabbath would be an easy one to board in. And I think it would be really cool. I'd love to see a tournament at some point with some sort of sideboarding element.
I think it also makes it much more tactical for the players if they have to try and get a read on what do I think my opponent is going to sideboard in and what should I sideboard in to counter that, or should I leave it the same, what should I do, and kind of getting a read on their opponent in that regard. I think it does add also an extra level to the competitive play, as well as making it, I think, more interesting to watch for the viewers and for the casters. Some esports, like I think Hearthstone, they actually just give the deck list to the player from the start. Like you don't even have day one where the lists aren't known. It's just like, here are the lists. Have fun. But I totally agree with you, Shinmiri, that I think it makes it more intriguing from a viewing perspective, as well as more challenging from a player perspective. And
you have to get a read on your opponent, what potential cards that you might need to play around, rather than just knowing every single thing. Yeah.
And CDPR have said that like it's maybe something that they're considering. Like I think they said they were looking at tournament format, and they're always looking to improve. So if it's something that the community says, hey, this would be cool because it adds an extra layer of kind of I guess unknown to the players, that they don't necessarily know 100% what it is that their opponent's going to play, that is going to alter their play style, and it'll be really cool to see how well they can read what their opponent will choose to do.
The problem is, though, in Gwent, where deck size is so small, things like that become very, very binary. So, like, you see that in Magic, where, like, you can sideboard in some things as answers, especially in some matchups. Like, in some matches in Magic, the first win that you get will almost be like a free win because your opponent hasn't got to sideboard yet and counter your strategy. Whereas in Gwent, I feel like it would be, like, absolute, There are some things that are just direct counters, and because the deck size is so small and decks are so efficient with so much tutoring, I think it would be a really hard balance to strike if any sort of sideboarding did come in. It's a tough one. I think like it would require a lot less tutoring in the game, honestly, because it's kind of crazy right now.
I think it would either have to be like different deck lists altogether, different archetypes, or different leaders altogether. Because changing certain cards, like you can change in like, I don't know, a Glyas where she's really good in some matchups, and then take her out for Skellige. Like there's things that would be like, every card would be like.
It's just like imagine like you come up against Consume, you just put your muzzle in, and like all of a sudden you win, right? Like it should never be that cut and dry, like.
You put in Geralt Professional against, a monsters deck.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some matches that are like 100% like merged in the set. So yeah, I agree. I think it has to be like either deck lists and maybe like trading out, maybe bringing 6 decks and bringing, different ones for day 2 or something like that. But
I think it's just a wider thing where the game just needs less tutoring in it as well. But that's a whole other thing. But one of the consequences would be tournament formats could be played, like at least experimented with. There's some different options.
I mean, the other thing to talk about is, I guess, we'll talk a little bit about Create, because we do have the patch coming that's meant to kind of deal with some of the Create cards. Do people think that Create was too prevalent in this Challenger, kind of just right? I guess that not enough is an option if you subscribe to that faction of choice. But, I mean, what do you guys think?
I think it was more than enough. I mean, like, look at the top meta decks, right? You have Alchemy, which is full of Create, on top of like Mahakam Ale RNG. You have Broover, which has got Elven Scouts, and then you have Hensel, that has Winch, which can be important too, getting the actual machine that you want or that you're looking for Hensel. I think there was one game where like somebody, I forgot who it was, played 4 winches and didn't get the one machine that they were looking for out of all 4 winches. It's not always game deciding, but it just adds another factor of RNG to a game that doesn't necessarily need it, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. Like some Create cards kind of feel okay, and other ones really feel very oppressive. And I think the problem is the ones that in top tier decks are the ones that feel oppressive, right?
I think cards like Winch, for example, they're fine, but they're a problem because of Hensel, for example, and then shuffling and a neck and all that. Because if you look at the power values from Winch, it's pretty much the same, for the most part. There's nothing crazy going on there. It's a pretty standard. Like if you have depending on the board situation, you can bring a different machine in that does more damage and get, more value basically. But as a card, I think it's fine.
I think Winch is okay because it's like thematic and has small variants. I think like the cards that have always been the most offensive to me from Create have been like Elven Scout and Slave Driver. Slave Driver is just objectively one of the most stupid card designs I've seen because, well, it's like you get to play your opponent's deck ahead of their curve. It's your opponent's deck +1, which is really silly. It's just a horrible card idea. And I think, like, you know, when you have that uncontrollable level of variance, it's ridiculous. Like, because you can't build a deck with Slave Driver in with any idea as to what you're going to play from Slave Driver. You know, it's like, hey, in certain matchups, it's going to have wildly different value ranges. So I don't like that whatsoever. And again, it applies to some of the silver cards too. The Runestones are easy to point out, but like Black Blood, the fact that, like, you know, 90% of what it can hit is trash, but you can occasionally like super high roll. That's kind of problematic. So I feel like Create is okay in quite a few of the ways that it's used, but yeah, it's more an individual card thing. Like, just every time a Slave Driver is played, I just wince, honestly.
It comes down to variance at the end. If you have low variance on your Create options, then it's okay. But if like one or two of your Create options auto wins you the game, then that's where it becomes problematic, right? Like, what was that? The Black Blood into Nekarat into killing Freddy's cows.
Yeah.
And then now he just has 3 dead harpies for the rest of the game. That's like game over, right? It kept going into those too.
You're playing Blood when you're not even playing an archetype that has anything to do with it. That's like the main thing. Like machines with Create, you're still playing machines, so it makes sense. Maybe if you change Elven Scout to play elves in some way, or apart from other changes, you know, something that makes it at least archetype restricted, where you're actually, you know, there's variance, but you're still constricted to your archetype or your general game plan. I think would be fine. And RNG like the Ale, like Shinmiri mentioned, and Freddy fishing for a Glyce or for Siri Nova, I think that's fine. I think it's part of card games and it makes it exciting. And I mean, everyone was excited when he finally drew Nova, even though he'd still lost the game. I think that RNG is gonna be in card games, you know, forever with card draw and just, you know, different.
That specific scenario took some level of skill from Freddy as well. Seeing the potential out, seeing like this is the only way I can possibly win is to high roll the Dragoon into buffing Hattori, into playing the Officer and drawing Siri Nova. Like, I think that sort of RNG, like you said, Panda, is fine. And that, especially when it takes some sort of skill in identifying that's the correct line to take.
Yeah,
I think that is fair. I mean, cards that we expect to be addressed at the patch are what, like Elven Scout and Slave Driver, right? Like, what do people expect to be changed in this upcoming patch in terms of
reckon, I don't know. Like, I legitimately don't know. I think they did tell me at one point, but I can't remember. I expect to see Elven, like, Runestones probably removed from Constructed. Yeah, I don't know how they change Elven Scout and Slave Driver, though.
And Black Blood as well. I think Black Blood is the kind of the weirdest Create card because it just gives you answers out of nowhere.
Right? Yeah.
Or like Hubert in like a consumed deck or something. It just doesn't make sense. It's
like you either hit like Osril or Ghoul or get nothing, or you get Hubert in like weird scenarios. Like
yeah.
Or you get Weather Clear.
Black Blood's just a weird card. Yeah.
I think Runestones and Black Blood are probably the biggest offenders and most likely to get removed from ranked because they're like their options are a lot of tech options, right? Mm-hmm. You get like reset, you get locks, you get Weather Clear from those. Those are the ones that are super swingy. Even though I don't like Slave Driver or Elven Scout that much, their variance is undeniably lower than like the Runestone and Black Blood.
I think Slave Driver has the highest variance in the game.
It does. In some matchups it does.
You can't predict. Well, no, just like as a card for deck building, like your entire Create options is dictated by your opponent, which means you have literally zero agency over it.
I mean, it's also because there's so many cards that are like they just spew points in a lot of archetypes. If the cards were a lot more archetype restricted and made, you know, like consume. When you use Slave Driver against consume, it's like, you know, great. I'm gonna play this Rand Warrior and get my imaginary neckers really high. You know,
the point is, even if you put in like, I don't know, say like a Runestone, you're like, hey, I'm gonna get some of these 20 whatever options. When you put in Slave Drive, you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to get. It's entirely dependent on my opponent. It could be any bronze card in the game in any match. Like, you know, it's just zero player agency in deck building. It's just an absurd card. I don't know. Slave Drive is just hilarious. It should just be deleted from the planet. Gwent would be a better game without Slave Driver in it.
I think that's fair to say. We've talked about it before, and it's a difficult one to kind of, what do you do? How do you change it? And I think it does come down to narrowing the pools. I mean, they have suggested that they're going to remove some Create options from just the ladder as a whole and just have them only available in Arena. How do we feel about that kind of solution?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean,
I think it's good for the competitive side of the game. I do worry a little bit about basically this combined with Homecoming, combined with another 4 or 5 months of the same meta. Next patch might be the most stale meta of all time without Create RNG adding some level of variance to the matches, and the game also being at a state where it has the least number of interesting mechanics in its entire history, because they've been removing like gold immunity and interesting mechanics over time, and now you're going to have another 4 or 5 months with somewhat of the same meta, but no create to, produce that fake feeling of difference in every match. I don't know how that's going to play out, but we'll see.
I think some cards can be tweaked and can be, changed to still be viable on ladder. Still have like a minimal amount of create, but cards that are just, at their very base, are just they exist to create random options like runestones, and those can just be removed from ranked and put into arena. But yeah, I mean, the lack of cards and stripping even more cards away from the game is going to be pretty tough for the next few months.
It kind of feels like with create, it's always either going to be amazing or trash. Like, if you look at the create cards that don't get played, there's the one that like makes a Nilfgaard soldier. There's like the one that makes a silver or bronze from your deck, like Portcullis and all those sort of ones. And there's a bunch of create cards that just never see play because the cards that they have access to are bad. Like the Monsters runestone, for example, is not really played because the Crones exist to just completely dilute that pool. Whereas every other runestone, you more or less will see somebody playing it, right? Like, maybe not so much the Northern Realms, but they do
Northern
see
Realms
play.
is
but the point is, like, you're always going to have that kind of, it's interesting that create, whether it gets played or not, seems very binary. Either the pool is good and you play it and you high roll into success a lot of the time, or the pool is bad and you don't play it because you low roll. And I don't know how you kind of fix that.
Is that not kind of just like saying cards are good or bad, though? Like, cards in, like, every card is either playable or not really playable. There's not any middling value cards that see play. I mean, I get what you mean about, like, create arguably should be more of a risk when you play it.
Yeah.
But I just think that's not really how it can work with Gwent, when it's quite like at the moment, such a relatively simple point-based game. Like, average values are always going to be figured out, and it'll always dictate the prevalence of the card, honestly. Right.
That's fair. Someone in chat says it's easy to play around Slave Driver, you just don't play bronze units. Isn't that what you were doing earlier today, Shinmiri?
Yeah, that was like me an hour ago, playing Spelltell with no bronze units, queued up against some Slave Drivers, and they're playing for one.
Fucking legend. That's amazing.
I mean, given the faction challenges on at the moment, that's a pretty viable strategy. There's a lot of alchemy out there.
Yeah, that's true.
So, fair enough. But okay, so going back to Challenger, let's talk about the kind of first round a little bit. The fact that Schmel, Coloboan, Apologize, and Super JJ all getting knocked out. The only one who got any sort of wins there was actually Schmel, who got one win versus Freddy. Was that a surprise to you guys, or did you expect it to be, certain plays, matchups to be so decisive?
I thought the only person I thought definitely would get 3-0'd was Schmel. So hats off to him for getting a game. It was a really close Skellige mirror, right? He got it by a few points. Yeah.
2 points.
Yeah, 2 points. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was the only one that I thought would be a 3-0. Colomone was one of the biggest surprises of the tournament to me. He himself afterwards said like he didn't play particularly well, which is always a shame, but bad days happen. Yeah, I know the first round of the tournament was really wild. It was fantastic. Like, it was such a fun day one. But yeah, it was a really, really wild series. It was cool.
Yeah, I agree. I only got really surprised by Colomon. I thought he was going to put in a bit more of a fight. In the end, I think Adskov played really well. And he played at his peak, basically, and Colomon played at his lowest. So it ended up being a 3-0. I thought that match was the closest of the whole quarterfinals. So a bit disappointed, but it happens in tournaments. You can't always play at the very top of your game. So yeah, and Hannah-chan Super JJ, I think Super JJ wasn't really preparing as much, and Hannah-chan was the opposite. He was on a huge momentum swing from open. He's been grinding like crazy. He got to top 8 with the least amount of games by a lot. I mean, he's been playing really well. So not too surprising either. And I think JJ's deck for a bit, spies and stuff, was a bit iffy. And the last match, Tailbot just played really well. And Apologize made a few key mistakes, I think, that really shut him down.
I think with Hannah-chan versus JJ, I think if JJ had played, like, even with the other 3-0s, if they had played the games in a different order, like in JJ's case, he's trying to target Greatswords, right? Like, if he had played that third game without not playing spies, playing one of his other decks targeting Greatswords, that might have resulted in him getting 1 or 2 wins. I'm not too sure exactly, but we'll never know. But I think that that's kind of a little bit of the luck of the draw with what matchup you lead off with. I think Hana-chan, his Greatsword deck could have been countered or could have been targeted with the right lineup. It's just a little bit of luck, a little bit of lack of preparation as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think JJ's strategy to target Greatswords wasn't necessarily a bad decision, but he kind of tried to target with Spies and Consume, which are maybe not the most suited decks for that targeting. And we saw, that it came to that point where when it was time to play Greatswords, he just lost. Mm-hmm. Admittedly, if Hana-chan had played Greatswords earlier in the lineup, maybe JJ would have had a better time because he didn't have that whole situation with playing the 2.5 games before that. So maybe that would have kind of helped things out a little bit. But ultimately, I think that's an example of targeting where targeting didn't pay off compared to the Broover targeting that she saw by Tailbot, which honestly worked way better.
It was just too soft to target. Tailbot, the thing is, I think JJ let his soft target define his decks, whereas in Tailbot's decks, it just accentuated his existing decks. Mm-hmm. So JJ went in with this whole hey, all of my decks are going to target Greatswords. It's yeah, but that's not the same as targeting Consume, where if you target Consume, you will just, remember JJ versus Colamo in an open, right? That happens. If you target Greatswords, you're just favored against them. You don't automatically win.
Right.
So I think that he just lent on a soft target too much and paid the price for it. Whereas Tailbot brought normal decks just with little tweaks to target Broover, and that works out way better. So I think JJ just relied way too heavily on a soft target, basically.
Yeah, I agree completely.
That's fair. He is known for targeting, so maybe that's just his kind of general go-to, and he was maybe just a little bit out of touch with what was going to happen. I mean, Greatswords did do very well in Gwent Open number 4, so maybe he expected people to bring Greatswords again. But I guess the flip side was people saw that Greatswords did well, expected people to target it, and then went for the cursed boat strategy instead. How do we feel about Greatswords as a deck choice versus the boats as a deck choice, like the cursed boats, that sort of strategy?
I think they're both really good decks. The thing is, the boats deck is better on blue coin because of the carryover, right? And Greatswords doesn't have that. And for a tournament format, you need to have blue coin decks and red coin decks, and that's why I think we saw the players who brought boats have more success because it was tailored towards that tournament format a little bit better.
Yeah, Shinmiri's spot on with that. I think Greatswords has a higher top end, but in terms of a stable deck with broader good performance, I think boats wins just because blue coin it's much more stable.
And I think Greatswords, when they're in the focus in the meta, and people really see them as a tier 1 deck, and they're going to be played, and they're going to counter, and you're trying counter and stuff, I think it loses a lot of power. I think it was really, really strong in the last Open with Hana-chan, where already in the ladder was already starting to be played, and it wasn't that big of a surprise, but in general, it had fallen off for a lot of months. Shaggy brought it to one Gwent Slam, and I think maybe an Open, but it was really low key. No one was playing it because it had counters, Vic of Aromatics and a lot of graveyard hate and stuff like that. So, and for a lot more reasons, just Skellige being very strong with King Brand already as well. But when it's in the spotlight, I think it loses a lot of power. Greatswords, it's better as a surprise deck where it falls off the meta and the cycle, kind of renews itself, and then it's good again for a month or two.
That's fair. So let's talk a little bit of Challenger from, I guess, the experience of being there, just because we have 3 people who were there. Do you guys, how does Challenger compare to Opens? Because obviously myself and Shinmiri, we've never been to Opens. How does it compare? What are all the saucy details? Tell everybody.
It's a completely different...
I was going to say we don't get drunk at Opens, but that's a lie. No, Challenger's just I don't know, because we've done a few Opens now, Opens are they're very exciting and they're very, engaging and stuff, but we have done them a few times. Challenger, we're never really quite sure what to expect. It's very exciting, just even the process of going there and wondering what the location will be like. And obviously a greater, more preparation goes into them and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like our WrestleMania or whatever, I guess. It's just really exciting. The whole weekend is constantly sort of wondering what CDPR is going to pull off next, because they like to keep us in the dark a little bit, so we also feel the hype, which is nice. It's great.
I guess the biggest difference is the production, really, in terms of because the tournaments are still games and players doing their thing and winning, their matches, and casting is casting. But the biggest change is the production, where with Challengers, it's obviously a much bigger ordeal. So they have, ESL helping out with production. That changes things a bit. And at the Open, it's all in-house, so it's all people have been working with for months already, and we know everyone on the production team, and on a first name basis, and it's really much more familiar and much easier, I guess, much more familiar basically, where you don't have to learn.
Easier.
Other than the obvious change in location, did you guys think that there was a noticeable difference in anything between the Challenger number 2 and Challenger number 3?
Jagras was there.
Jagras was there. I think
that might be the biggest difference apart from the location. It was also different because we had a caster desk and an analyst desk. It wasn't like together like last time. Swim was just joining onto the caster desk basically. So
it made we had one desk and we had to keep sharing it, which was
that was
horrendous. That was a lot more often.
So I guess
it made our job a lot easier. I think for me and Merch as casters
of what we had to do. Me and Swim were basically like, so let's say at the start, McBeard and Miguel would be on the desk, and then they'd like cut to, and they'd be like, this is Challenger, and you have red coin and blue coin, and explain like all the kind of basics, and they roll that video that explains like how Conquest works.
Masters is
that one. Then it would cut to a video, at which point they'd have to get off the desk, we'd have to get onto the desk, and then talk about the matchup. So in that case, it would be the first match, which was Schmel versus Freddy, and we weren't allowed to talk about decks at that point at all, because the decks were going to be a surprise for the viewers when they were played. So we can't talk about decks. We also weren't going to talk about bans because the bans were reserved for the casters. So we would talk for a bit. And then we cut to a video, and we'd all have to get off the desk, and they'd have to get back onto the desk. And then me and Swim would go and hang out basically with the ESL guys in production in this room that was full of computers and ridiculously warm. Like crazy, crazy warm.
Is that why Swim wore shorts? Because it was like too hot there?
I think that's a completely different.
Shorts,
that's a different argument altogether.
I think Swim does just wear shorts. He didn't realize though that when the camera panned, you could see the shorts. Like he thought you only saw them at the end when when it was the presentation. So we're in this really hot room. We have one guy next to us who doesn't really understand Gwent too well, and he's the guy who we instruct to make replays. So if we get to a point where we want to replay, we'll be like, right, we need you to go to this bit, and I'll be like, oh, go to where they played War Dancer. He doesn't know what that means. So then it'll be like, right, go to about here, and while one of us is instructing him, the other person has to be watching the games because the games are still going on. You can't just be like, right, pause the games while we make a little clip. So then we're kind of doing that while also figuring out the angle that we want the presentation to have. And then after all that, I have to run off and do an interview. Then we have to get back on the desks and switch with like the casters, and then switch with Panda and Merchant once they come back. So it's a lot of kind of musical chairs and running around. It's like pretty hectic. Like it's really fun, but it's super stressful.
Yeah, CDPR told us if we behave next time, they'll let us have 2 desks, which will be nice.
Also, like Miguel and Dane, McBeard and Mogwai, they would always forget that they were meant to leave the desk. So me and Swim would just kind of like, Panda and Merchant were like, okay, we're done. We're out of here. And then Miguel and Dane would just be like sitting, chilling in the chair. And we'd be like guys, like you need to move. So it's fun. It was pretty stressful, and having a single desk, like it meant that there was a lot of running around and stuff. So we wouldn't know what the video was, for example, that we were going to be throwing to or coming back off of. So we couldn't really make comment on it to make it flow a bit better. But I think in future that they are aware that having a single desk like that is it's a bit awkward in terms of logistics. And it also meant that we had a lot of videos, and some people complained that there was too many videos, but part of that was to accommodate the fact that we had one desk.
Okay, that makes sense.
The headphones were better this time around. It was quite quick to switch. Open headphones is a completely different beast.
But
this time we had like easy just headphones, take them off, and a guy even like helped us clip on the back and stuff. Like it was a guy that was his job when we were rotating was to get behind us and help us like pluck on like the thing. So it was a lot easier at least to switch. But yeah, it's a bit tedious having to focus on that and not focusing on like what you're gonna do next for your cast or your analysis.
Yeah. We also had the problem during rehearsals that the screen for the casters was like angled in such a way that if you were sitting in front of it, you couldn't see what was on the screen. Like it was just completely like screen glare. And so we were like, oh, you need to angle these more forward. And they did angle them more forward for the next day. But the thing is, I'm really short. So my screen, even though it was angled more forward, I don't know if you guys could see the screens when you were looking at them. For me, I couldn't see a thing on the screen in front of me. I had to keep looking at Swim's screen to know what was on the camera.
I could see some of the things on the screen in front of me. You can see all of them, it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, so there's things like that you don't necessarily realize from a viewing perspective that there's like little hiccups along the way. But I would say the most fun part of the event is just meeting everyone. And I think that it would be really good to have like an event where people can come and spectate. Like Wild Hunt events, for example, are a really good example of that, because anyone can go along and meet the kind of NA side of the Gwent scene. And I think the social aspect of Challenger was, like, for me, the favorite thing. Like, it was really cool to meet Panda and Merchant and Swim and all the players in CDPR, and just, like, you know, kind of actually meet the people who you talk to online on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I understand why there isn't, you know, an audience and stuff for events right now, and why a lot of things logistically work the way they do with CDPR, because it's kind of an in-house venture into esports isn't the easiest thing if you don't have experience with it. Like ESL does, or MLG, or like a ton of different companies that have been doing this for 10 years or 15 years now. So going into it with a team that was never built, and I think for the most part was not hired specifically for esports and was just part of the team from before, and moving into esports is a hard thing to do, and there have been hiccups that have been, I think it's been improving little by little, but as we go forward, I think there are going to be changes, and there will eventually be audience events and you know, maybe bigger tournaments with more than 8 people and different formats, and not just conquest and stuff like that. But I think it's a learning process, and little by little, I think the CDPR as a company will evolve into that, and hopefully make tournaments even better than they are now.
Yeah, there's definitely learning pains with running these sort of things, like some of the logistic issues that Jagras was mentioning. But I mean, it's probably going to keep improving as we see more and more challengers. So definitely optimistic for the future. Hopefully, like you said, we'll see some audience events, maybe eventually something even as big as like the international. That's probably quite far down the road, but that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think CDPR they're always wanting to improve, right? They're always looking at how can we make this better? What can we do to improve this? And you see that as opens go on and as challengers have gone on, they're really trying to improve. Like Challenger 2 was better than Challenger 1, Challenger 3 was better than Challenger 2, this sort of thing. And I think what made this Challenger especially good was the diversity in the decks that people brought, meant that it wasn't a spectating situation where you just keep watching the same kind of matchups. There was a lot of kind of spicy decisions made by the players. And I think that kind of led into the fact that the games were so, I would say, you know, good to watch in comparison to maybe some of the other events, like some of the opens, where a lot of players bring the same kind of decks.
I mean, that's more the last open. I think the rest of the opens have had their own, you know, metas and their own flair. And I mean, for the most part, you had some metas that were kind of very stale, but the Consume open with like targeting and all that, I think it made it very exciting. At least, you know, it was something very different. Because Consume fell off.
Mill open. Oh my goodness.
It's stuff like Mill. I mean, you know, there's definitely been kind of very different opens, at least the official tournaments, and where you see like very different strategies being employed. So there has been, you know, a bit of a stale point the past few months, but in general, I think there's always been kind of a separating factor between all the tournaments till now.
So apparently at the end of the stream, the camera like panned up towards the rafters and there was some like screeching monstery noises. And some people have postulated that this suggests that Challenger 4 is going to be monsters themed, because we've had Nilfgaard, we've had Squirtle. What was Challenger 1 meant to be?
Northern Realms.
Northern Realms. Yeah, so we only have Skelliger and monsters. So if you were going to have a monsters venue, like what do you do for that?
I would wait until it was the shittiest weather imaginable. I'm talking like hurricane, and I would dump all of the players in like, you've seen the Blair Witch Project. I would give them all hand cameras and a torch, dump them in a forest, and they have to scavenge and make a computer out of twigs and berries to play Gwent on. And then, just as they're loading into their first match, I run out of the forest dressed as a Necker and fight them to the death, and the last one surviving wins. That's what I'd do.
Moving on to more realistic options, I think something like a haunted castle kind of thing, like Transylvania vampire, the woods maybe, like something like that. I think would be the most viable option.
Teshem Mutner would be pretty good.
Yeah,
like for anyone who's played Blood and Wine.
Oh yeah,
so, yeah. Teshem Mutner would be dope. Like dark vampire Castlevania, basically. Yeah.
Basically like a castle, but like a lot grittier and like in the woods kind of haunted scenario. And obviously they're very good at finding the correct locations, and I think Poland must have a lot of haunted castles as well, so they'll find something in some dark woods in the north part of Poland or something. There'll be something, don't worry.
Is a castle not too similar to Challenger 2, which was already in a castle?
No, because that was meant to be grand and nice, which made this one fucking horrible. Like,
It could be in like
make it
a ruins.
unpleasant for all the players. Yeah.
Or just
Exactly.
occasionally
Castle
have like
somewhere.
screaming happen in the background every so often, and like
In their
just, like,
headphones.
and like just have the lights cut out occasionally, just like, oh, it's spooky.
When
I
is the
don't
next
know.
Challenger? It's in August, right?
August.
Yeah.
And then one in December. So I would actually have the monsters one maybe wait until December, and then you're gonna have like the new expansion, maybe like a new vampire expansion. It would come out with like all the Dettlaff and other, that would go along well with the Tesha Mutna theme and everything like that. So too bad there's not one in October. It could be like Halloween and monsters at the same time. But
Yeah, you could
I mean,
definitely plan to. What about Skellige? What would you do for a Skellige tournament? Other
Like,
than
it's just
raid
gotta-
a
I would
small
go to the,
town on the coast of Britain.
No, I'd go to the Shetland Islands. Anyone who doesn't know what Up Heliar is, you need to look that up. And yeah, that would be the ultimate setting for a Skellige tournament. Let me link this in the chat, all right?
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so there's this festival. So my father's side of my family are from the Shetland Islands originally. And there's a festival in there at the end of January called Up Heliar. I just linked in the chat for anyone who wants to see. And basically they remake a giant Viking longship and burn it. And there's like mead halls and like games and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's like the ultimate. Just like open Google Images and have a look. It's incredible. Like the festival the festival like peaks when they like burn the longship and stuff. It's dope.
Yeah, that could work. Anything like Viking themed or Norse themed, I think would fit with the lore, because it is a lot of it is inspired in like Norse mythology and stuff. So anything like that would work, I think.
Skellige's mostly like Gaelic clans, like Northern Ireland. Well, they have Northern Irish accents, but yeah, it's very like Gaelic Viking themed. So
Yeah, they can have a tournament in Norway or Scotland, except plus no, because I don't want to go to either of those places. Being a Scottish person who lives in Norway, this is like just kind of normal for me. I don't know. I think the difficulty is like there's lots of cool kind of Nordic stuff and there's lots of cool monster stuff, but being able to do that inside, which is the requirement for the event, makes it kind of like monsters you would expect to be like outdoors in like a swamp or a forest, or I guess you could do it in like a cave, but then a cave is kind of similar to a mine, and then you kind of have that whole issue.
yeah, I think it's all in how you dress the place, though, right? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I think Tesh and Mutna would be perfect for monsters, but it's very specific, or maybe like a wild hunt thing.
That's fair. Well, it's kind of getting about time for viewer questions now. So if anyone has any questions for myself, Panda, Merchant, Shinmiri, or the group in general about Challenger or anything else, just post them into the chat. You can at Topdeck Gwent in the comments. And while we wait for a few questions, this is your chance to shamelessly promote yourselves. So we'll start with Merchant. If you have any shout outs or I guess like channels that you want to promote, Twitch and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/merchant. I don't know, really. Come watch me and Jaggeris play Dungeons and Dragons on Saturday at twitch.tv/bonusactionrp. You can come watch us be nerds and play D&D. Yeah, don't know, really.
Just because we're not nerds now.
Press screen cap on this stream and tweet me a zoomed in close up of Panda's face at twitter.com/col_merchant. I will retweet all of them.
Don't do it, guys. Don't do it.
Please
You're
do
promoting.
Print
You're
screen.
promoting bullying.
Print
I
screen
will
right
report.
now.
I'll report
Zoom
all your
in his
tweets.
face.
I will
Right to
bring
me.
down your Twitter accounts. I have contacts.
Yeah, he'll report
Don't
you to
do it.
CD Projekt Red.
Oh, it'll go much further than that. It's like a police investigation kind of thing. As for my shout-outs, I may stream in the next few days. This is serious. I may stream some Gwent or some Magic, or a mix of both.
He said it on Discord, so this is him saying it twice
Yeah,
now.
he said on Discord that he was going to do it today, and then he didn't do it. So
I've had things come up. I lead a busy life.
that is categorically untrue.
You don't know my life. Don't judge me.
Didn't your flag used to be upside down, Panda?
It was. You see, I've been busy with that today. I've been switching the flag around.
So
No,
Somebody
you have
stream
not. You
took
did that.
photo
You did
ask
that
you on
months
stream.
ago, you little shit. Because I told you.
But I switch it around every day, like back to upside down, back to normal side. It's a tough job, I have to constantly switch it around.
As for
Shinmiri,
me, I stream every weekday on my channel Shinmiri 2. Starting to stream a little bit earlier now, probably around like 6:30 p.m. CEST. I try to maintain an educational and analytical stream, so it's a great place if you want to learn about Gwent, try to get better and improve, to come check me out. And shout out to Team Aratuza for being an awesome team and very supportive as well. And thanks to Topdeck for having me on today.
Oh, that's okay. You've been awesome. And I totally agree. From the analytical perspective, I've watched Shinmiri stream, and it's a really good place to kind of learn and kind of just pick up on things that you might miss yourself when you play. Like, I think learning from others is a great way to improve because they may know or do things that you wouldn't typically do, and then you can kind of learn as to how or why you should maybe make those decisions. So, moving on to questions. Someone is asking how comfortable Merchant's shirt is.
My shirt? What?
Your Topdeck shirt.
Oh, this. Yeah, no, yeah, it's really comfortable. It's made out of like jersey material. It's,
oh, you guys
nice.
are both wearing them.
We're matching. We talked about it today.
Yeah. Well, we got up together today. What you can't see is we're actually in the same room.
Yeah.
But
that's why Panda's bed is made for once, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's why I turned the flag the right way up as well. But yeah, no, it's very comfortable. Thank you to my main boy Swimothy, who brought me this as a gift. I appreciate it. And,
hey, that's true.
So I'm gonna butt in with a Gwent joke really quick before we continue. with
if this is your Glace joke, no.
So
Panda tells really, really bad Gwent jokes.
Okay, we're not gonna do the last one because it seems
not the
Glace
joke. Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna go for a story version of a joke, so it's more entertaining for the viewers. All right, so please, Jagras and Merchant, don't spoil it. Don't interrupt. Okay. So there was a mighty Skellige longship that harbored all of the Skellige faction. Every single unit and card was in this longship. And it was sailing to the east. It was going to raid some exotic lands to the east and plunder the villages and just take all the treasure with them. A month into the journey, they ran into an absolutely terrible storm. The waves were like skyscrapers. The wind was howling. It was terrible. And they were nowhere near any land. They were in the middle of the ocean. And all of a sudden, the ship sunk. And only one single character survived. One card, one unit, one entity. Who was the survivor? No spoilers in chat, guys. Don't do it. It's a very, very simple joke.
I know the answer.
Only a single. Shinmiri, do you have any answers?
Yes.
In the middle of the ocean.
I do.
Have you heard this joke before?
No, I haven't. I haven't heard the joke before, but I have a guess.
All right, what's the guess?
My guess is Heimdall.
No,
because
incorrect.
Everybody dies, Kambi dies, and Heimdall's the only survivor.
It's a good interpretation.
His answer's better than your answer, Pat.
Morkvarg is also an okay interpretation, but it's not the answer because they res back. It could be understood like that, but no. The only single survivor is Coral. Because she is
in the middle of the ocean. That's a good one.
Her natural habitat.
Jaggers is
guys.
Like,
I'll be back. I'll be back every Topdeck show. I'll have a small segment to tell my jokes. So if you guys want to hear more jokes, just tweet at me, tweet at the Topdeck to get me on the show every week, and I'll see you guys here.
We can end the show every week with like a terrible Panda joke.
Is he done?
Great timing, Merchant. He just finished.
I was just starting Merchant. So
there was a long ship. Oh my god. Questions from chat. What was your reaction when LifeCoach showed up on his bike?
I think I was quite fucked, so I just called him, I believe, verbatim, fucking mental, but also let him know that I was very impressed. He cycled for like 6 days non-stop. Yeah. Well, presumably with a stop in every now and again, but yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, someone was
he's a nutcase. I love
LifeCoach
that guy.
is cycling from Austria to Challenger, and I was like, no, he's not. No, he's like oh, good one, but no, yeah, he did do that. He looked pretty tired.
Yeah, I walked into the bar and LifeCoach was just sitting there, and I was like, "Oh, Adrian, what?" And he was like, "Yeah, I just cycle here." I was like, "Oh my fucking god!" Yeah, he's great. Adrian's a fantastic person. He's cool.
Someone asked about Axemen. Here we go. An actual Gwent question. Are Axemen underrated? Were you surprised that nobody brought them to Challenger?
No, I think they're right under the level, and especially when they're fighting against decks like King Bran and Greatswords. I think that's the biggest thing. If there weren't any viable options in Skellige already, then maybe.
I also think with Elven Scouts and how popular they are, the amount of row clears that you see appear on them, like, I think it's too dangerous, Axeman, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah, like one of the reasons why I don't play Axeman right now is just because of Runestone RNG clear, Elven Scout single row weather clear. It's just, it feels horrible when it happens to you, and you definitely don't want to put, like, you don't want to put your tournament career on the line or your, like, challenger chances on the line so open to that sort of variance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the reasons why I think.
Also, the fact that most decks right now have clears in them.
Hydromaean,
In the meta, there was a point in the meta where there were no clears whatsoever, and Axeman and Golden Weather even were kind of viable on Pro Ladder, but that changed quickly, and now it's just not a good meta for Axeman, I think, to be honest.
Fair enough. So last question, just to round out the show. Do we have high hopes for the patch at the end of the month? Personally, I think
don't all say yes at the same time. Holy shit.
Given CDPR's history with Gwent so far, I'm like, I don't expect much. I feel like they'll probably change very few cards. I don't think it's as big a patch as some people expect.
Yeah, I think not either. I think I have very high hopes, and I'm very, very obviously because we're speaking to them and stuff, very, very excitedly following Homecoming. I don't have much hope in the May patch. Just because I just don't think it is a big thing. I think people are hyping it up to be way more than it's going to be, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing, but not a big thing, like Merchant said. I think it's just going to be, I mean, there's no surprises, I think, for the most part. I haven't been, I'm pretty sure there's just, what they've stated. So it's going to be helpful towards fixing some parts of the game, but it's not going to change the game. It's not Homecoming itself. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just realistic expectations.
I think, no matter what it is, there's still going to be the insane drought period. That's just a thing that's going to happen. I think a lot of people are, hyping this patch as something that's going to negate that, and I just don't see anything negating it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there will be that many changes, but I do think that it will impact the meta significantly, with Alchemy probably going out of the meta because of all the removal of the create cards, potentially Slave Driver as well, and then we'll see not as much Broover. I don't know exactly what they're going to change. They said they're going to change Ward Answers. Maybe they might change Broover in the being able to pull the Spy every single game. But with those two decks probably significantly nerfed, it might open the door to some other underplayed decks, like engine decks that get completely destroyed by Viper Witchers. That might come into play. So we might see something, but it's not going to be a whole lot of balance changes. Is my expectation.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Well, we will have Berger on the show later in the month, so if you're more interested in what's happening with patches and stuff, that is a good show to tune into. But for this week at least, that'll do it for Topdeck. Thank you to Panda for joining me as co-host, to Merchant and Shinmiri for coming on the show. Shout outs to Complexity and Team Aratuza. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. And hopefully we will see you next week with more Gwent chat. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.